I'm going to introduce our speaker here in a minute, but first I want to talk about the unusual story about how I met Steve. Steve and I were sitting next to each other on a flight. Was it to San Francisco or from? To San Francisco. And it turned out that we were discussing, we saw each other's iPods and had the same outstanding taste in music, arguably. And we got to talking, and we talked about what each other did, and I got to find about what Steve did with the foundation. And I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but it was really fascinating. We wound up keeping in touch, and for 2 years running now, we've had students out from the foundation here up here to Google, a small group of under 20, about 15 to 20 students, give them a tour around, and then we spend a couple of hours actually sitting up in Gold Coast talking about, with a group of Googlers, talking about what it is that makes them excited about working here, what it is that makes them happy with their lives and with their jobs and that sort of thing. And I think the students enjoyed it immensely, but all the Googlers who've participated have come out of it with quite a bit as well. It's really been a great experience. And so with that, Steve said, "Gosh, what can I possibly do to repay you?" And after he turned down my cash request, he offered to come up here actually and give a talk to us about giving and about what that means. And again, I'm not going to give a whole talk away, but I'm really excited as somebody who does believe a lot in giving to charities of your time and money to hear what he has to say. And with that, I will turn it over to Steve. So thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I think I'm happy that you said great music, because I think the last time we got together you said cheesy music. And I didn't think that was fair. I thought the 80s were an awesome decade, and parachute pants are making their way back. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I just want you to know I'm not selling anything. This is not a Tony Robbins seminar. There are no tapes at the back of the room. So when I gush about Google, the reason I do that is because the affection, I guess is the best way I can put it, that Google has shown our foundation and the kids that come here, really, to be quite honest with you, is pretty incredible. And you should hear the stories, and I tell Fitz all the time, it's not while the kids are here, because you have them trapped. And I'll get into our foundation in a minute. But you have them here, and they're in front of all these executives, and they're very intimidated. But the second they get out of here and get on the bus, it's nonstop chatter about how cool it was that we were here. And it changes their lives. So anyway, I mean, that's, when you see all of the great Google stuff, it's general admiration. Just to give you a quick idea as to who I am the executive director of the Give Something Back Foundation, the president of the Heartland Cares Foundation. And I'm here with Bob Tucker, who I work with, who does many things at the office, but Bob comes from the university background. So a lot of what we do, and I'll talk about it in a second, has to deal with sending kids to college. So Bob is kind of the resident expert dealing with with universities. And we're very blessed to have Stephen Kahnert here as well. And I love the title Generosity Coach. But that really is kind of a catch-all title for all kinds of things that Stephen's done in his life. And he's at the point right now where people call him for ideas and bounce ideas off of him. Actually, he's kind of a walking Google, which is a high compliment. Now, this is a very serious question. I take this very seriously, because this is going to tell me everything I need to know about you. You're stuck on a desert island. Now, let's assume there's power. Okay, but only not for anything else but for your CD player. You have 5 albums that you can choose, and I want you to either think about them or jot them down. If I'm stuck on a desert island, these are mine. So this tells you pretty much everything you need to know about me. Okay, we have the Beatles' Revolver, Dean Martin, The Messiah, Dave Brubeck, and of course REO Speedwagon, the hits. So this is serious. I'm not going to answer any questions until you tell me your albums. One of the reasons why we're here, as Fitz said, was giving back to Google. I believe very firmly in the fact that we put good stuff into the universe, good stuff comes back. But my whole goal is to enrich you in some way today, and I don't care how that is. So if I can give you something or give Google something back based on all the things that you've given us, then it will be time well spent. The 3 points that we're going to cover today is illuminating key questions. What are the key things I should be asking before I give my dollar? 2, discussing giving trends, just some industry stuff that is kind of interest if you're into giving. And then develop a giving strategy. This all sounds complicated, long, and boring, but believe me, we'll get through it very quickly, and it is not that difficult. First of all, the Give Something Back Foundation, just so you know kind of what it is I do. We were kind of informally started in 2003 when a gentleman and his wife, Bob and Jill Carr, decided to give a scholarship to graduating seniors from Lockport Township High School. They gave $100,000 to 5 students to go to any college they wanted in the country based on some parameters, which were character, income, and GPA. So he decided, Bob and Jill both decided to formalize this in 2006, and that's when the Give Something Back Foundation was started. Now, what we basically do is our core is taking kids with those same qualities but picking them earlier. So we picked them in 6th grade. And we've actually developed a robust, if you want to call it, curriculum. So we put them through etiquette training, we visit Google, we do things that they normally would have no opportunity to do otherwise. And then hopefully by the time they graduate high school, they're more prepared for life, and then we pay for their college experience. So that's the core of what we do. I don't know if anybody has a computer here, but we also have a website. And one of the things that we did recently as a side project, if anybody's ever been in Lockport, Illinois, we built a park called Lincoln Landing. Very, very quickly. It is one of the most significant pieces of Lincoln geography anywhere. And it happens to be in Lockport, Illinois. So we actually built a park contiguous to a very, very good restaurant along the I&M Canal in Lockport, Illinois. So that was actually our project, and it was typical Bob and Jill. I often ask myself, why are we doing this? But really the answer was because it's the right thing to do. And that's kind of the nexus of how the foundation was started and how we run our daily lives. Now, to talk about some questions. These are questions that, as you're kind of thinking about giving, some key points I think that everybody should really walk through is, why do I give? What gives me passion? To whom do I give? Will my gift make a difference, and how do I give? And really, one of the things that, the key components to this is really kind of the how. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that than anything, and we'll see in a moment. But the why is where we start. This is my personal reason for giving. This is where you really need to understand, this is my personal giving philosophy, and what's your giving style. And really what a lot of people don't really think about is, what is my budget? Okay? So, you start in January. How many in this room have ever sat down and said, I need to go over my philanthropical budget for the year? Wow, very impressive. Doesn't happen often. Most folks kind of give as they go. And it can be kind of counterproductive, and it's counterintuitive. But again, that's one of the things that we need to think about. So find your passion. Well, what gives me passion? How do I define it? I define it as that thing that when you're sitting at your desk and you have one of those wandering moments, or if you wake up in the middle of the night, or if you're watching a TV show, this is that thing in your stomach that motivates me to not just look at it and feel bad, but this is the thing that when I think about it at night, I can't sleep. This is the issue that I actually talk about at cocktail parties, trying not to bore everybody. But I call it then, the next step is like that Cardamone hypothesis, which is there's a direct correlation between the amount of passion you have for something, and then that directly correlates to giving of time and of your treasure. Because quite frankly, I think if you're giving time and treasure, that's kind of the ultimate, that's the peak, that's the pinnacle of how strong you feel about something. Because it's easy to, I don't want to say this like it's any less, but it's easy to write a check. It's really difficult to do both. So anyway, that's kind of my hypothesis. And to whom do I give? Who can facilitate my happiness? I think that's a key question. I'm going to tell you a little story here. I had that moment, I'm sure everybody has this moment somewhere, no matter what it is, you have that connection. But when I was in school, in college, I had a professor who I really liked, accounting professor. And we were in class one day, and next day he wasn't there, missed a week. Then he was there, then he missed a week. So he came back, and I've always been kind of an outgoing kind of person. So I walked up to, to in front of the lecture hall, and before class, and I said, Dr. Carroll, I haven't seen you in a while. Where have you been? And he said, well, my daughter has cancer. So I'm terribly sorry to hear that. He said, well, we're putting a benefit together because she had at that point, very rare form called neuroblastoma, which is one of the, it's all evil, but it is one of the most evil forms of cancer because it attacks really kids. It attacks their brain. So I'm going to try to keep this all together because I can remember this like yesterday because I said, okay, I'll do anything I can to help. And he said, well, we're getting some items for a raffle. We're going to have a dinner dance and we're going to have a fundraiser. So I said, I'd love to help. So I had, at that point, connections with the Chicago Blackhawks. I interned there, and I got some hockey sticks, and I was doing my thing, and I was helping Dr. Carroll. Life is good. I'm doing my job. But I was really doing it for him. I really had no connection with the cause, so to speak, until he asked me one day, would you mind dropping it off at my house? Sure, not a problem. So I had all the stuff and loaded up my 1984 Cutlass with the lure seats, and pulled up to the house, and as soon as I got there, he was at the door, and he said, could you please put a mask on? He said, because we can't have any germs in the house. So my heart started thumping. I'd never been around anybody chronically ill, let alone a child, and I didn't even think that she would be there. So we walked in the house, and there was Michelle sitting on the couch. She was totally bald. She had a mask on, and she was holding her little blankie. I said, at that moment, I get this. I get this. This became very real. There's a 3-year-old little girl who all this garbage that I had to sell, big deal. Now, I became a warrior because I need to do whatever I can do for this kid. Didn't even know her, but I know I couldn't get within 50 feet of her because I would have made her sick. So I think when you answer that question, I think it becomes a matter of, this is very, very personal for me. And again, that gives passion. And I'm sorry, it's a side note. I think the next question is, will my gift make a difference? This is my hard-earned dollar. Okay, and I think a lot of you here, this is going to be a little bit of review because you're already thinking about your dollars and how they're going to work throughout the year. But talk to the director. Is the organization viable? We're going to talk a little bit about trends in the near future. Part of the trend is 501c3s are being treated just like businesses. Don't invest in a loser. If you have an organization that is not spending money wisely and the money's not going where it's supposed to go, you don't give money because you feel bad for them or you think it's a good idea. You have to really, take the next step. And how do I give? This is the big one, time or treasure. Time is huge. That's the intangible. And, I broke this down into ways that made sense to me, which were professional skills, amateur skills, or grunt skills. Well, professional means I'm a marketing guy. I can walk into my local Red Cross office and create a marketing plan for them. I'm directly using my skills that I use on my job. Part of what I think is the benefit of that is, it's not a problem here. And again, I'm not saying this because I have so much admiration for you, but I do. But at some companies, you don't have an outlet. They don't let you try new things and using your skills at your job. Well, this is a great way to use your skills in different innovative, interesting ways because you're donating your time. So that's a direct way. The next way is the amateur skills. How many of us in this room, and it's probably everybody, have something we're passionate about other than work? We all do, right? I love to garden, believe it or not. Probably because the plants can't talk back. It's a one-sided conversation. But that's another way. You can be a professional. The same marketing professional can say, you know what? My local church doesn't need a marketing plan, but you know what? The outside looks terrible, so I'll plant some flowers. So you're using your skills that way. And then you have your grunt skills, which is, do they need to stuff envelopes? Believe it or not, it can be just as important as the professional skills. And by the way, one of the things I failed to mention, I don't have it on this presentation, but if anybody here sits on a board or has any board-specific questions to deal with 501c3s or boards in general, we have a wealth of board knowledge in the room here. And I'd be more than happy to talk about that because a lot of this is going to be very applicable. And then the how do I give? Well, let's flex our proverbial muscles for a cause. That's the professional in us. As my professional skills, I can show the world or show this organization using my professional skills, the things that I can do to make them better. Or we can sharpen our prodigious skills in other areas. This gives you a chance to practice. So as an amateur, you can practice your skill at a charity level. And again, if you're doing grunt work, you basically get the feeling of doing great work. So again, just 3 different ways of thinking about it. Now let's think about treasure. A lot of people say, well, do I give gifts of money or time? Well, it's kind of both. in some aspects, because are you going to do a one-time gift? Are we thinking ahead? You know, and I think part of it comes down to what gets me more excited. Do I feel better knowing I'm supporting an organization via check, or when I show up and actually get my hands dirty serving food? Now, keep in mind, this is not to make anybody feel guilty. I think we live in a culture where it's very common to make all of us feel very guilty, to say, well, if I'm not at the soup kitchen on Thanksgiving, then I'm a horrible person. I don't think that's the case. I think it's whatever gets you jazzed. You know, what gets you excited? You know, if it's saving lemurs in Madagascar, chances are you're not going to get there to do it, but you can certainly write a check. But it's all about where your personal passion lies. And yes, just so you know, that charity does exist. I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of giving. And this is kind of the stat that blows people away. And the first thing is, everyone thinks charities, it has to be, you know, the reason people do it is for the tax deduction. Well, yeah, there is a reason for that. But 90% of the folks can't take, because they don't do their taxes, they don't take the deduction. A, they don't make enough money, and B, they don't, help me, itemize their tax deduction. So it's a fallacy to say that people give just for tax reasons. That's garbage. Blow that out the window. And the second thing is, 15% of all the monies, 15% in the most generous nation in the world, come from corporations and from foundations. So that means the other 85% is coming from people like us, writing checks, being passionate. So again, it's very important to understand that. So we're going to talk a little bit just about the psychology, which is fear or guilt. This is like point one. Why do we give? Oh God, here comes John. His kid plays t-ball. I have to give him $10 or he's going to hound me. This is like, again, this is the gift that works. I mean, pressure works, but does it get you jazzed? Do you get excited? When was the last time you gave a gift of like buying M&Ms and it was lasting? You felt great about it. Man, I can't remember one either. But that's what this is. Psychologically, this is not the way to go about long-term good relationships. Necessity. We talked about this a little bit, which is, boy, this is a great organization. They just cannot get their act together, but I'm going to write them a check anyway, because I think what they do is great. Yeesh. That really doesn't inspire long-term giving either. Self-interest, one of my personal favorites. The Cardamone Law School, you know? Or I get to go to a fancy dinner and they're going to put my name in a book. So for that night, I'm an all-star because my name's in a book, but you know, at a cocktail party, have you ever whipped out a book and said, hey, just by the way, in 1987, I gave 100 to my high school. I rock. Not so much. Passion. What gets us excited? You know, this is my cause. This is the cause that if you insult this cause, you insult me. You know, Colin Powell, who his biography was great, and I really love the guy, but he once said, never hold a position so close that if it goes down, you go down with it. Okay, that's kind of squishy to me. I just don't buy that. I say to myself, there are a few things that if you insult that, you're insulting me. So again, this is the thing, that passionate thing that you know, that once you figure out what that is, nobody can take it away from you. You can talk about it passionately, and at some point, you wouldn't be afraid to raise money for it. That dirty word. But yeah, it's true. So after all, what is philanthropy? Does anybody know the definition of philanthropy? Not you. Who said it? Love of people. That's what it is. It's a love of people, and that's what this whole thing is about. Who do you love? Long-term donors give because they love you, they trust you, and they're good stewards. Okay? I give to organizations that I know will do well with my money. And that's kind of what it's all about. It's finding, it's like anything else. You have to find out what your outlet is for that big ball of wonderfulness you call your wallet. Who's going to take care of it? Like I would. So we're going to get past that. Let's talk about some new trends in the industry. And I'm going to be done here in 5 minutes. Trends in the industry are these active vacations. If I'm really passionate about building stuff, it's not just about Habitat for Humanity anymore. It's about going to Peru, living with a family, and rebuilding a church in a village. Call them active vacations. These are becoming very, very, very popular. As people become more affluent and their causes can become a little bit more, shall we say, pinpointed, not as broad, These are things that people are doing. So it's a very big trend in the industry. The next is the donor-advised funds versus foundations. I'm not going to get into this too much, but just know this, because there's a point here. Foundations in the past have been abusive because they put their sister on the board, their brother on the board, they're paying them salaries, and 2% of their money is going out, 98% is staying in our pockets. I'm making those numbers up. But the long short of it is, through abuses, foundations, and we'll talk about it with Sarbanes-Oxley, they have to run more like a business, and there's many, many more restrictions, and they're expensive to start and they're expensive to maintain. So the donor-advised funds, which is like this great alternative, which is kind of like if you go to Vanguard, it's a mutual fund of goodness. Does anybody here know what these are? Okay, good, because I don't want to retread old territory. But to make a long story short, if I have a cause where I want to save mountain lions, specifically at the reserve in Kilimanjaro, I can call Vanguard, and chances are they will have, and I don't work for Vanguard, just throwing it out there because they're the biggest, but they have a fund that I can donate my dollars to that will specifically attack that problem. Why is that good? Because I'm pooling my money with other folks. And the second thing is, I'm not starting my own foundation to make it happen. What's the downside of it, though? I'm sorry, and there's better tax deductions if you do it that way versus a foundation, because they cut back on that too. But what's the downside? They're called donor-advised funds, which means at the end of the day, they could donate your money to help homeless in Chicago. So they really legally can do whatever they want with the money. Does it happen? No, not really. But just know that it's an option out there. Foundations give you maximum flexibility. And nonprofits, like we just talked about, Sarbanes-Oxley. At this point, because of all the abuses, they have to now go along with the standard accounting principles that that the regular companies are now, which I think makes it even that much more important for folks to look at not-for-profits like a business, because they have to run like a business. So when you're going to invest your funds, make sure you do it with a good, I hate to call it company, but a good 501c3. Here's a good question. It's kind of an uncomfortable question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm into uncomfortableness. That's a word. Many funders hold back because they say, I don't trust you enough, so you can only take my money if you build sidewalks at the quad that I used to walk through when I was in college, and you can only do X, Y, Z, and if you do anything else, I'm taking my money back. That's what we call restricted giving. Okay, it makes us feel good because we know our money's going for something very specific. However, it'd be like your boss saying, I need you to get this project done, but here's exactly how you're going to do it because I can't trust you as far as I can throw you. Okay? What you want is, if you really trust, love, and your organization are good stewards, trust them enough to give them your cash. Okay? And if you do the research ahead of time and you feel comfortable enough, that's the level you need to get to. So restricted gifts are kind of difficult from a 501c3 perspective because you're adding strings to it. Now, this is like the personal plan. This took me all of 5 minutes to put together because this is the common sense Steve way of doing it. Now, is this the way that you can look online and find plans put together? No. This is my suggestion on how I do it. My first question is, what gets me jazzed? We talked about it. What am I excited about? Conceptually, these are my core values. What do I want to support? Now, think about this generally. I dig animals. Let's say that's where I'm at right now in my life. I love animals, which is not true. I'm just using that. But you say to yourself, this is where I want to be, so I need to find a cause that allows me to take care of animals. The second question is, what organization is an outlet? All right. Well, you really got to think about this because I know I love animals, but is PETA or the Humane Society going to best reflect what my core values are? So even within the portion that you're excited about, what organization is going to best reflect my personal mission? And then again, if the organization doesn't exist, can I find a fund that allows me that flexibility to do it? How am I comfortable giving? Now. Now is easy. It's time and treasure. I can donate time, stuff, and envelopes, or I can write a check and I'm done. It's over with. Or do we look in the future? Everybody in this room can make a long-term estate gift if they so choose. A $100,000 piece of property in a home, you can very easily donate. As a matter of fact, it was Loyola just accepted a $50 million gift, estate gift, yesterday or the day before. Okay, most gifts though, are not that sexy. You know, they're $150,000. As a matter of fact, there's a little house in Lockport that just got donated to the Historical Society that is worth, you know, X amount of dollars, but I assure you it's not $200,000. Okay, but these are long-term gifts that you can make, and can you think about it right now? Absolutely, you should. For what's my budget relative to my income? What can I give? But the real question is, what do I want to give? Do I tithe or do I not? What am I comfortable with? So again, when you're in that budgetary process, you also have to think about your time. How many of us, I know I have, it's so easy to say, all right, Steve, if you just help us, it's only 5 times a year. If you can just come in and help us out 5 times a year. And then every other month, it's like, didn't I just do this last week? You have to think about budgeting your time as well. It's very important, because when you make a commitment of 12 times a year, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's, you know, obviously that's once a month, and that actually is a rather, you know, large time commitment. Then measure success. Did my organization spend wisely? Okay, in other words, there was an organization that I know of, which will remain nameless, that was helping out 30 people. They had 32 staff members. Awesome. Awesome work if you can get it, I guess. I mean, are they spending my money within budget? Not so much. Are they within mission? So in other words, not only are they spending that money, but are they doing with it the things I said they were going to do with it? Did they communicate with you? In other words, did I get, as a donor, communicated with to show me where my dollars went? Don't let that fool you. Any organization can do that. It's very simple. Even the organizations that don't have infrastructure. A digital picture and an email. Let me know what you're doing. Of course, do they know how to right the ship in turbulent times? I mean, I'm tired of using the example, but the economy, let's face it. There's a lot of things that are going on right now that have never happened. Has the organization that I'm passionate about, have they adjusted their tack? So that's a good question. And then, do they appreciate you? It's very simple. Do they appreciate your dollar? George Thorogood once said, "Who do you love?" And I love it, because that's what this whole thing is about today. If nothing else, it's about, what do I love? What am I passionate about? And like Google, okay, how many people in this room that I've met, all these great folks that have shared their time and talent with the kids that we've brought in, how many of them went to school because they knew they were going to work in the computer field? Right? No, it's not about that. It's about what gets me jazzed. Once you answer that question, the smart folks figure it out. And that's what I think makes Google successful. The smart folks with passion figure it out. So, anyway. My last question is, was this Google-licious?